Hey everybody, it's Dee Dee here with Take Three, and I'm here with Ian and Eshom, brothers and the masterminds behind Fatman. How are you guys?
We're excellent. Thank you for having us, Dee Dee.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, it's great.
Awesome. So, in this day and age, original content is few and far between to come by. How did you guys come up with this?
Well, I think, look, for us, it came from, we looked at the genre of Christmas, right? And we were like, oh, wait, we've seen the family-friendly Tim Allen version, which we love and adore and has many, spawned many sequels. And then we've seen the sociopath that comes down your chimney and wants to chop you up. We've seen these sort of outlier projects like Rare Exports, which we enjoyed. But for us, there was just room in the genre for sort of a contemporary everyman take on Santa Claus. And so we kind of we're going for a contemporary Western in a lot of ways. And we wanted a Kris Kringle with idiosyncrasies and foibles and sort of a blue collar, worker that we could relate to in a way. And, having grown up in the Central Valley, I think Kris Kringle, the version that we presented on screen is very much reminiscent or an echo of those people, of those ranchers and such and farmers that we grew up around in the Central Valley, California.
And the one thing we were really excited to do when we were crafting the story was to lean on what Ash was saying, is that we were really trying to get you into the character of Chris as a human being before we started really kind of laying a lot of the lore and the mythos on you. We wanted to really get you cemented in, this is a person, this is a human being, and get you invested in that guy. And then oh yeah, shit, he's Santa. Or if you're watching it and those things start popping up and you're like, because I think the one thing we were trying to be conscious of is it would have been great to cut a trailer where no one knew he was Santa, and you just thought it was this factory worker. And we only showed the first 20 or 30 minutes of the film and then a couple of little clips. And you're like, okay, someone's coming to kill a factory worker. I don't know. But
that was our pitch, but they didn't go for it.
But the reality is the hook of having a hitman come to get Santa Claus is what the sales marketing team was like, no, that's the hook. That's what's going to get people to come watch it. So we had to give that away. But so we were like, okay, well, maybe there's a, what will work is for the first 20 or 30 minutes of the film, you're like, okay, when's this guy going to become Santa? I get that he's going to be Santa, or he couldn't be Santa already. He's using a gun and,
he's partaking, in spirits at a bar. That's not Santa,
Yeah. And but that was the idea. So, is to come in, get cemented into the human being. And then oh my God, that's right, he's Santa. Or, oh my God, he's already Santa? Holy shit. And then take that ride and start getting all those reveals,
And Ian and I, look, we love a good three-hander. Our mother has a reverence for Clint Eastwood. And so she would get the Clint Eastwood collection. And so a new VHS classic of the Eastwood catalog would show up at the Nelms household every other week. And Ian and I would just wear those things out. And obviously one that leapt out at us was The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, right? So a classic three-hander Western. And so we kind of took that and sort of wanted to structure this story in that way.
And so when you come in and you've got, it ends up being more of a baton pass from Billy to Skinny. And that was purposeful because in our mind, it's okay, Billy, you start off with this 12-year-old little shit. You're oh my, first you're I don't know how to take this kid. And then you're oh, I get it. He's a piece of shit. And then it's he baton passes to the horrible hitman that very well could be his future. And so that not only are they tied in because they work together, or that he hires this guy, but they're tied in because hopefully you can sort of see ghost of Skinny Man's past and ghost of the kid's future.
Yeah.
Sort of staring at each other with that baton pass. And you're okay, well, these are two really bad characters. This is where that kid could end up if someone doesn't intervene,
So whose idea was it to bring in the hamster?
I can't remember whose idea it was. It's funny because the way Ian and I collaborate, it just becomes, we synthesize the vision so much by passing the screenplay back and forth that we can't remember we can't delineate who wrote whatever. Rarely, honestly, rarely can we go, oh yeah, you wrote that line or I wrote that line. I just can't remember.
Literally it comes down to I'll write, let's say I write a line, and this happens in reverse all the time, but I'll write a line, a line of dialogue, literally a sentence with 6 words in it. And then he'll come along and be yeah, yeah, I like what you're trying to say here, but let me change half the sentence. And then I come back in and I'm like, there's probably 2 words in there that I don't like, even one that I wrote, and I'll change it. And then he'll come back in and change it, and I'll change it. And then, 15 rewrites later, as you do, you kind of read through it and keep going, and then read through it and keep going. You're changing little things as you go. And by the time we get to the end of it, that sentence is such a synthesis of both of us that I don't know whose sentence it even started as,
But I think as far as the hamster, like, we just loved giving Skinny Man something that he actually had reverence for and cherished, and that it wasn't human, right? Like I don't think he's capable of having that sort of in a relationship with a human. There's also sort of a metaphorical sort of angle what we were going for, where Skinny Man is very much, if you were to personify him as an animal, he's very much a snake deep down inside, although he doesn't want to admit it. So for us, that hamster is a snake's food, and so he loves the power that he has over this thing, and then rather than eating it, he kisses it, and then when that woman calls him out at the pet shop because she can see his true colors, like, that sets him off, right? Like, oh, how dare you, but he knows there's too much truth in that.
And there were also a lot of callbacks with that hamster to, there are not a lot of callbacks. There's one mention of it to where it's like, I think in the pet shop, he's like, yeah, this is the only animal I've ever had since I was a kid. And you can kind of see like a reverence and the way, in my opinion, the way that Walton delivers that line, there's some moments of tenderness that sneak through in a word or two when he starts to say that. And then, well, this is the only animal I ever had, or however he says it. I just remember this moment of sort of childlike naivete washing over him for a second. And then when she insults him, it brings out that tiger in him again. And of course, it starts to remind him of his mother, who he had a terrible childhood with. And then he starts lashing out,
The only thing I regret that we couldn't figure out how to put in the movie was Walton named the hamster.
Yeah, that was a hilarious sequence.
Oh.
He named it Simon. And I don't know. It was just the way. There was a scene where it's running on the treadmill, one of the takes, and it was like, "There you go, Simon. You've got to work out." And we just couldn't quite wedge that take in. So, but that's the only bit with the hamster I regret didn't make it to the screen.
It ended up just being a pan off after the pet shop. You just pan off of the hamster to it running, to him looking like a proud father. It ended up being that shot, but we did a couple of variations that were really funny, of course, because Walton's really funny.
What's interesting about working with like a little hamster like that is, so there were 6 of them. They all looked very similar, and you would have to curate like which one was good at the treadmill, or like which one would let Walton pick them up, and like, so there was all these different, like, they each had their own little proclivities on what they were good at. So it was like, oh, we got to get the ringer, Simon 2 or Simon 3. It was crazy.
And I remember there was one that was really good at standing up on its hind feet. There was one that would just sit and kind of chew and be like this. And there was another one that would like run really hard in there. And there was another one that would run the wrong way. There was another one that would just sit in the middle of the wheel and just look at us.
He was the smartest. That was the smartest one. Like, are you kidding me? I'm not running this thing.
Like, you're not getting me to run, guys.
It's by far, the pet shop is one of the best scenes in the film, and then you literally do just pan right into the hamster running in the car as he's continuing to drive. It's fantastic.
Oh, I'm glad you got a kick out of it. It's good that your sensibilities reflect ours.
So not only are you guys the writers, you guys are the directors of this film as well. So when you were getting ready to cast, was Mel and Walton your first choices or not?
So we wrote the script. We started writing the script in probably 2004. We started having the idea of what we were going to do with it. We started writing these 2 short stories. And then we probably had a functioning script by 2006. And I remember that vividly because we actually sent it to a manager that we ended up getting, and she read it and was like, "Oh my God, like, this is nuts. This is awesome. I want to take you guys on. I think I really like the script." So she was really charmed by the script. She was wonderful. She ended up passing away of cancer, maybe like 5 years after we had gotten with her as a manager. And she was just a wonderful person, very passionate, amazing, veteran of the business, just an old badass. But she was the first one to read that and really understand it and champion us. And that's why I remember 2006. But we wrote that script so long ago that when we first wrote it, probably in our mind's eye when we were writing it, I know we had Jack Nicholson as Chris. in mind, and we had Johnny Depp, at the time. Those were our two. That was the battle royale the showdown that was gonna happen. We were excited about, and I remember it changed. Obviously, Jack semi-retired. Johnny,
aged into the role like a fine wine.
Exactly. And we were at a Hacksaw Ridge screening, and he had that amazing beard, either from the shoot or because he was heading into Professor and the Madman next. But he had that amazing beard, and we were just like, wow, like he looks great in a beard. And then he had this amazing passion in the eyes, yet kind of rolled over shoulders because he was in the middle of or at the end of his awards campaign, and it had been a long shoot. It had been a long post. He was in the middle of a long slog on the campaign. And he just looked a little tired, but he also looked like, if you were to sort of, contextualize it into what we were looking at, he looked like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders and his passion still in the eyes. So we were just like, that's him. That's the guy. And he got the beard. Like, he's perfect. Oh my God, we got to get him. If we ever get a chance, we got to get him. And then, cut to 2 years later, 3 years later, I think it was 2.5 years later anyway, but we had finished a movie called Small Town Crime, which was our previous film. And that is really what unlocked a lot of doors for us, because in that 14 years, we had been going out with it and getting a ton of meetings and taking a lot of meetings, and people loved the script. And they were like, okay, but like, what's the tone of this? Like, this is crazy. Like it's a crazy cool concept, and someone's going to make this someday, but it's probably not going to be you guys. And we're like, why? And they were like, because you gotta build a
director dependent.
Yeah, you got to build your directing reel, and you have to show somebody that you can do this. So we started making movies, honestly, off that advice back in 2006. And when we got up to Small Town Crime, we were able to finally do something that reflected the tone, because it's a Western, it's a dark comedy, it's a character piece, it's drama, it's action, it's the dark comedy. And we were able to meld all those in Small Town Crime. And when we got to a meeting about Fatman, we just sort of pointed back and we said, that's it right there. That's what the tone of this movie is. You can watch Small Town Crime. You can see all of it kind of functioning together. And so we started getting a lot more interest in us directing it, and finally got some companies that were like, yeah, we want to do this with you. Who do you want? And we were like, Mel Gibson. And they were like, all right, that sounds amazing. Like, let's go out to him. So we went out to him. 2 weeks went by. We hadn't heard anything, and we were taking emails from financiers. We were like, okay, yeah, great. You like the script? You want to talk to us? Great. And then we got
they're like, you might want to start thinking of another option, because it doesn't look like we haven't heard back anything. It's looking bleak for a minute there, Didi.
So then we got this email that said, hey, I read the script. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really funny. Let's sit down for a chin wag. And we were like, chin wag? What's that? Like, what's a chin wag? There was no sign off. It wasn't like, and the email wasn't like, Mel Braveheart 25. So we were like, okay, who is this? I wrote back. I said, hey, who is this? Thank you so much. We'd love to sit down with you, thinking it's another producer or financier. And he wrote back, oh, sorry, I forget to sign off sometimes. This is Mel. And we were just like, oh my God. Yeah.
Right.
And I think we hugged. And then after that, we got a meeting with him. They said, okay, you got 45 minutes with Mel in a cafe in Malibu. Just sit down. You guys just talk, see if you guys, had gel. And we're like, okay, great. So 3.5 hours later, we come out of there, still talking on the way to the car. I think he had to actually go do something. And we were like, all right, hey, we love this. And I think the moment that really sealed it for us, I don't know if it was what sealed it for him, but it was what sealed it for us, was when he started talking about the moment where he's out on the balcony talking to the elves. And he was like, in that moment, I really feel like this is like, he's like, I gotta be like, I'm almost ready to cry. Like, this is a huge moment. Like, I can't believe I have to tell them this. It's killing me inside. We're all, yes. And he's all, and that's what's going to make it so funny. And we're all, exactly. That's exactly the tone and the feel and the vibe we want to give to that scene. It's just, he just got it right off the bat. We talked a little bit about how grounded we wanted to play it. And he snapped right in there and was like, oh yeah, I as well want to play it that way. And I see this guy as an old cowboy. It was just
at no point, like, we never wanted it winking at the camera. You know what I'm saying? Like, and Ian and I said, we're not writing jokes here. It's organically, the humor will be organic from the circumstance and the characters.
Yeah, we have an idea of what we think might be funny, but it's not dependent on that. It really is like a Western and a thriller up front. And our comments on genre, or our comments on society, or the organic situations we try to put these characters in with the plot, in the heightened moments that we're taking seriously are hopefully the humor and the dark humor that you're getting out of it, rather than some belly laugh because somebody farted or something, you know?
And then when it came to Walton, right? Like we had sat down with a few other actors who would have all done a marvelous job in their own way. But I remember when Walton came in, and that idea was brought to us by ICM, and they said, "Hey, what do you think of Walton?" And we're like, "Oh, like, gosh, you know, like
why was he not on our top
part, right? Like, what were we thinking?
Top of the list.
Like, we'll sit down with him." So he came into this cafe, and we weren't the only ones in the cafe, right? There were a lot of people in there sipping on their lattes and such. And Walton just sits across from us, and all of a sudden, like, you know, we're talking about the script, we're talking about the stands up and starts embodying Skinny Man. I'm looking at this elf. And I'm like, oh shit, like, you know, people are, you know, kind of got the whole restaurant's attention. And
yeah, he's one of those guys that can just, like, I think it's rare for anybody, right, that can stand up in a crowded room and then all of a sudden the world washes away and all of a sudden he himself is in the movie and he's in the scene and that's all he could see, and that's how it felt. And we were just like, holy shit, like, there he is, there's Skinny Man right there. And people are like, what the fuck is going on at table 6? And we had a great time talking to him for about an hour and a half, and we really gelled with him and thought he understood it really well. And again, he was just like, what, when you guys talk to me, I remember one of his first questions to us was like, when you guys talk to Mel, he's like, what, how did he think of playing this? And we're like,
he's playing this real, right? He's playing this real,
right? We're like, yes, he is. He's like, oh yeah, all right, great. You know, like everybody it was great because the people we cast in the film had a very high understanding of what we were all making. And that, honestly, you know, they say casting is 75% or whatever people say, but it really might even be higher than that, because
it might be 100%.
What movie you're doing, it gets really tough as you're like, you know, the director, like trying to steer a giant car that is out of control because they're not in the same movie. It's really hard to get somebody on, you know, on the same wavelength as you. And thankfully, like our top 4, like Mel, Walton, Marianne, and Chance, like in talking to them after like Chance sent an audition tape in, we had a conversation with him, like, okay, this kid really gets it. He's really smart. Like, he's like, you know, 12 going on 35. Like, he's really smart, really on top of this, really into the craft. Like, I mean, it wasn't like, hey, I like to act. It was like, hey, let's talk about my character and like the layers and like where I'm coming from. What's my motivation? It was like, holy fuck. Like,
I mean, he sent in his video for Billy, because what we realized soon was that we, you know, with the budget and everything, like, we weren't going to have time to coax a performance out of anybody or like shoot until we got what we wanted. And the dialogue for that character is not easy, right? Like, there's some, you know, there's some fancy $2 words in there. Like, there's a bunch of stuff in there.
Well, we could see right away that it was like, I mean, of course we were a little worried off the top. We're like, shit, how are we going to get a kid that can really deliver this performance? I mean, are we going to have to look for, you know, someone that, you know, is 25 but looks 12? Like, what are we going to do here? And then luckily Chance sends in this audition tape, and I mean, it just was rolling off of his tongue. He was just killing this dialogue, and we're like, wow, okay, this kid really has an understanding of it, because there was a ton of other kids that were like 10, 11, 12, like really struggling with having it feel natural out of their mouth, because I mean, they just don't use words or turn phrases like that, you know?
Yeah.
But Ian and I turned to each other after watching this audition, and we're like, wow, that was really good. And then Ian's like, maybe too good. Like, yeah, because we didn't know if that was him, right? Like, is this the kid? Are we going to have like a little Damien on set here, like marching around trying to give orders and stuff? We're like, oh man. So we got to get this kid on a video conference and just see how he is. Couldn't be a sweeter kid. Like, instantly, like, just a total pro, you know, was like he and his dad were amazing to work with the whole time. Yeah, just have nothing but rave reviews to say about Chance. And then
and we say his dad because I mean his dad is you know, comes out with him because you know, it's his son is underage, so it's like you got to have your dad with you. But I remember his dad is just like obviously incredibly proud of his son and couldn't be a better collaborator for his son, in that he's just like, all right, Chance, just do your thing. What, you know, it's not like he's leaning on his dad for support or a performance. His dad's just there for support and to be the chaperone and just a great dad. So when we say him and his dad, it's not like, you know, his dad's coaxing a performance out of him. I don't want to lead that because
acting coach. No, he's not.
He has no fucking acting coach. His dad is giving him no advice. His dad knows less than he does about acting. Like, he's all his own force, literally learning on TV shows and stuff. And he would tell us all these amazing stories about some of his co-stars on one of the shows he's on right now that he's been on, I think, for 2 or 3 years, called A Million Little Things, or I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
And they sent us a bunch of clips from that show too. Once we got interested in him, and man, his dramatic work on that show, because it's a very dramatic show. You know, it's not like a teeny bop show. It's very dramatic. It's very real. It's very grounded.
The absolute antithesis to this character as well.
Exactly. And we watched. Again, he's a very sweet kid, very sweet, emotional kid in that show. And we watched a lot of those scenes, and we're like, oh wow, like. This is a complete 180 from what we're asking him to do, and he killed that. Like, yeah, and he couldn't have been a sweeter kid. We couldn't have been happier with him. He was amazing.
And then as far as Marianne playing Ruth, like we, from the beginning, had always wanted to have Ruth as a person of color. And so it really, that dynamic really excited us because we hadn't seen it before, and it's the world we want to live in. So for us, we were just thrilled. I remember when we presented Mel with the idea, he was like over the moon for it. He was like, oh, that's going to be great. And then when we talked to Marianne about it, she was like, you know, where am I from? Where's my character from? Like, what's the dialect here? And then Ian and I are just entranced by this gorgeous British accent, right? And we're like, I think it's that. Like, we want you to go with your natural accent. She's like, ooh, you know, because it made the picture for us more international, right? We're like, oh, what sleigh ride was Chris on when those two met, you know?
Yeah, it gave us that layer and depth of like their relationship and their past. And we're obviously, you know, if we get to do a sequel, we're really excited to explore that and to show that, because just casting her in that role like opened up so many possibilities and ideas for us once we started, you know, working with her and being like, oh my God, like, I mean, the biggest reason we cast her is that she's such a lauded dramatic actress. Like, she's an incredible dramatic actress, and she's very alpha. She's very, you know, like a badass in almost everything that she does. But then we would see some clips of her in a few things where she had this undercurrent of motherly warmth kind of beneath this badass, you know, exterior. And we were just like, oh man, like that's Ruth like that right there. Like, because of the ending of the film, we knew we had to have somebody that you would believe could sort of be capable and pull that off. So we were like, okay, you know, and you need somebody that's really running the business, because Chris is not like a business running type guy. He's like the, you know, jolly old elf up front that's getting the job done, but she really is the logistics and the heart and the spine behind that business, you know?
And that sort of echoes the relationship that our own parents had. So they owned a photography studio together for about 20 years. And that dynamic in Fatman definitely echoes the relationship that they had running their business.
So
Yep.
you mentioned it just a little bit. When's the sequel?
We're kind of thrilled, you know, because like Ian mentioned, we'd written these two short stories before. One of them was period, you know, very, you know, a little expensive, a little cost prohibitive.
It was about how he got the job and how, you know, how their relationship came together. And then, you know, there's obviously an adversary in that short story. And then Eshom wrote the one that was very much the contemporary one that turned into the movie, the one that we ran with, because when we looked at the one I had written, and the way that worked is we brainstormed this idea and this backstory, and then he ended up, and we were like, all right,
like, these things are like a page long. They're like they're not the movie. There's so much more that came into the movie.
Yeah, they're just kind of outlines of like what we think the idea is and what we think the world is, and ideas and moments of dialogue, but not full scenes or anything. So we did these little shorts, and then we passed them to each other and read them. And that's probably the first and only time we've ever done that. But it was such a cool exercise because where both of our imaginations went was really interesting. As mine went to a prequel in a like an origin story, and Eshom's went to, you know, 1,500 years later. You know, here we are in contemporary world, kid, and you know, all that backstory we talked to is just backstory, and all the stuff that's happening now is like, you know, you got to build on a current story and a hitman and a shitty kid, and you know, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to put, you know, hints at what we were going to do or what we were going to have in a prequel, or where he came from in that current one. But yeah, we have a prequel and an origin story that we're super pumped about. And of course, having this thing for 14 years, like, and casting the people that we did and getting the performances that we got, I mean, it opened our minds and eyes and got us really excited about where we could take, you know, a sequel.
Yeah. So I see sort of you know, the next one may be an amalgam of that.
Yeah.
Nice. I mean, well, you guys, the movie is so good, and it's one of the best Christmas movies, action movies that I've seen in a long, long time. So I'm I'm praying for a sequel, and I want to see more, and I want to see more of just Mel being Chris, and where it could all play out.
Well, we can't wait to do it. So
Yeah.
it's we just got to get it on paper now.
Yeah, I will say the good thing is that the film is doing really well, and we're like, the distributor and the producers are already hitting us up saying, when are we going to do a sequel? And honestly, everybody's down. We've talked to everybody. They're all like, yes, this will be so much fun. Let's do it. It's literally just logistics now. It's like, okay, everybody's schedule's got to open up. Eshom and I have to write a script. Like there's a lot of all the little things sort of need to fall into place for us to get it rolling. But it's very positive, very optimistic, and everyone's excited about it for sure.
That's great. Now, really quickly, is the hamster going to be in the sequel? Because I'm really afraid that the hamster's in the car by himself.
Wait a minute. You see the very end when we pan off, remember?
That's right. That's right. They do take the hamster.
Yeah, they have. They've adopted him.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot almost. Okay. So, my bad. The hamster is going to be in the sequel. Fantastic.
He's now part of the Kringle household, really.
So, and where can people watch Fatman now?
So
Go ahead.
It's on every VOD you could think of, or I believe it's even on the pay-per-view channels, but it's on Apple, iTunes, Amazon. I guess it was the same thing, Apple's and iTunes, but iTunes, Amazon, Fandango. I know it's just about anything, Vudu, whatever you usually rent on. It's also in red boxes. Let me think. DVDs come out.
If you prefer special features in the traditional disc format, there's the red box option for you.
Exactly. And I know the DVD and Blu-ray are coming out on the 26th, which will also have all the we did a commentary with Mel and our DP and our producer Michelle. We had a lot of fun on the commentary, and one of our friends that watched it recently said it was great because we just don't shut up for 40 minutes straight, or an hour and 40 minutes straight.
It was just a good time, just sitting there, catching up with everybody.
Yeah, and then we've got a storyboard to film comparison, because Eshom's a professional storyboard artist. He storyboards every frame of the movie, and we took a couple of key scenes and just said, hey, here's kind of our process, and then we did a commentary over it of why and how we did certain things and what changed and why. And then there's some deleted scenes on there, there's some extended scenes. So a lot of fun in those, honestly. And again, we did a commentary over those to talk about why we cut them and why they were there in the first place.
So December 26th, it's coming out on video.
January 26th.
January 26th.
I know it's a month after Christmas, which sounds kind of crazy, but whatever the dates are, at least it's available for Christmas digitally.
And then when will the merchandise be available?
God, that is a great question.
Yeah, you can go to nelmsbros.com. We got a bunch of T-shirts on there. No.
It's honestly our next. It's the next thing we want to do, because a lot of people had some really funny ideas of Fatman wallpaper, or not wallpaper, wrapping paper, Fatman ornaments, which would be amazing, and then beyond just T-shirts and hats and fun stuff like that. But yeah.
It's fun to see the independent artists out making stuff. I just bought I just bought some stickers from somebody. I'm off the internet. I'm like, oh, those are cool. Bought those. Someone did an old retro VHS tape cover of it.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. I'm like, yep, I got to have one of those. So,
but that honestly is such a is such a compliment, or we couldn't be more humbled by that. That's really fun and cool to see people sort of taking a piece of what we've done and making it into their own. That's really fucking cool. That's a lot of fun to see people getting excited about it to make a piece out of it of some sort,
Well, I know that we love the movie, my husband and I both, and it just thrilled that you guys came here to talk to me and Take 3. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Take 3.
Yes, Dee Dee, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.